Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this press corner with Vice President Vera Jourova. Good morning, Vice President. In the context of the plenary meeting that takes place today of the task force of the Code of Practice on Disinformation, the Vice President will say a few words, and then we have time for your questions until 12 o'clock, until the midday. The floor is yours, Vice President.
Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Indeed, we just have up and running the meeting with signatories of the Anti-Disinformation Code to mark its first anniversary, but also to plan ahead. We have, I think, 12 new signatories. Now the code has 44 signatories altogether, including major online platforms such as Facebook, Google, YouTube, TikTok, or LinkedIn. But it also includes advertising industry and civil society. And today we also welcomed, as I said, the new signatories, which are completing the idea or the reality of having more diverse participants under the Code of Practice. We do not have Twitter anymore, as you know. I am very much aware of the work that the signatories have been doing to implement the code. It's not a trivial work. They have a lot of commitments. So today it was more than appropriate to thank them for their work and for their sustained commitments. I thank them for the first set of data which we received in January, and now they are preparing the new load of data which we should get in July. And so we have plenty of things to discuss today, also vis-a-vis this new data coming. This information is not new, but this information got new strengths in the digital world, in our society, and that's why we have to act. I will not repeat the whole story. Also, I will not go into big details by saying that with the Russian war in Ukraine, we also opened a new chapter. Simply, the war is not just the weapons, but it's also words. The Russian disinformation war against the democratic world already started many years ago after Crimea annexation. We saw big campaigns of disinformation being produced in Russia by pro-Kremlin sources. So this is not business as usual. What the Russians want is to subvert and to undermine the support of the public opinion of our citizens for the support of Ukraine. They want to decrease the trust of the citizens in democracy, in democratic institutions, and we simply have to defend our interests, our democracy. We have also to defend our, I will say it, fight in the war, because what we do is supporting Ukraine to win the war. We want the signatories today to discuss how to prepare for the full implementation of the Digital Services Act, because you know there is an interplay between the Code of Practice, which is a voluntary agreement, and the Digital Services Act, which is enforceable, a set of rules. I would like now to highlight a few areas where I expect more from the signatories, especially major online platforms. First, and I already indicated that's addressing Russia and pro-Kremlin disinformation. Second, consistent moderation and investment in fact-checking. There is still far too much dangerous disinformation content circulating on the platforms and too little capacities. Fact-checking and labeling across the EU, in particular in smaller member states and languages. You don't hear this from me the first time. Also, the signatories heard it already several times from me. We need them to have sufficient capacities in all member states and in all languages. Especially the Central and Eastern European countries are under permanent attack from especially Russian disinformation sources, and we need the fact-checking to be done properly. I was in Bratislava last week. There was Meta and Google representation. I tried to connect them with the Slovak representatives who deal with security matters and elections, because these are two angles which we have in mind in doing a lot against disinformation: security and protection of elections. And there is a lot to do, and this is about capacities, this is about the knowledge, this is about the understanding of the language, and also understanding of the reasons why in some member states there is the feeding ground or the soil prepared for absorption of big portion of this information. So it was the fact-checking. Shared access to data, again, the same thing which I already mentioned many times. The researchers still criticize that they voice that they do not have sufficient access to information and to data. So I urge platforms to step up their efforts in this regard to make sure that they enable researchers to do their work and contribute to the necessary transparency. Why we need the researchers to get the data? Well, I see this as a triangle. The platforms, the political sphere, and the researchers. The political sphere has to react on the negative trends which we see in the online sphere, but without having the sufficient data being properly analyzed by the research community, we might enter the zone where some bad decisions might be taken. So this is why also for the Commission and for the legislators, this is of strategic importance that we have a feedback from research community about what's happening, what's the impact of this information on the society, what's the trend we need to know. Last but not least, generative AI. The new AI technologies can be a force for good and offer new avenues for increased efficiency and creative expression. But as always, we have to mention also the dark side of this matter. They also present new risks and the potential for negative consequences for society, also when it comes to the creation of and dissemination of disinformation. Advanced chatbots like ChatGPT are capable of creating complex, seemingly well-substantiated content and visuals in a matter of seconds. Image generators can create authentic-looking pictures of events that never occurred. Voice generation software can imitate the voice of a person based on a sample of a few seconds. The new technologies raise fresh challenges for the fight against disinformation as well. So today I ask the signatories to create a dedicated and separate track within the code to discuss it. The code today does not cover these sorts of tools. The Code of Practice provides an important forum for this, and this task force is precisely aimed at evolving and adapting the code in view of technological, societal, and other developments. I see two major angles where and how these chatbots should be discussed. Signatories who integrate generative AI into their services, like Bing Chat for Microsoft, Bard for Google, should build in necessary safeguards that these services cannot be used by malicious actors to generate disinformation. And second, signatories who have services with a potential to disseminate AI-generated disinformation should in turn put in place technology to recognize such content and clearly label this to users. I said many times that we have the main task to protect the freedom of speech, but when it comes to the AI production, I don't see any right for the machines to have the freedom of speech. And so this is also coming back to the old good pillars of our law, and that's why we want us to work further on that also under the Code of Practice on the basis of this very fundamental idea. I also expect the relevant signatories of the code to use the July reports to inform the public about safeguards that they are putting in place to avoid the misuse of generative AI to spread disinformation. I had a pleasure to speak about it with the CEO of Google, with Mr. Sundar Pichai, and I asked him, did you develop fast enough technology to detect the AI production and label it so that the people can see that they do not read the text produced by real people? And his answer was yes, but we are developing, we are improving the technologies further. So, a last comment on Twitter. I think that we were very clear with Thierry Breton in our reaction. We believe this is a mistake of Twitter. Twitter has chosen the hard way. They chose confrontation. This was noticed very much in the Commission, and I know the code is voluntary, but make no mistake, by leaving the code, Twitter has attracted a lot of attention, and its actions and compliance with EU law will be scrutinized vigorously and urgently. The code is not only the right thing to do, it also supports the signatories in preparation for implementation of the Digital Services Act and the Digital Markets Act. I was longer than I wanted to be. Sorry, and thank you for such patient attention. Please.
Thank you very much indeed, Vice President. Time for your questions, Florian.
Florian Neuhan, ZDF German TV. Mrs. Jourova, I'd like to ask on the label. Could you elaborate how this label would look like? And are you sure, are you optimistic that only a label on a voluntary basis will really prevent the abuse of AI-generated content with regard to disinformation?
There must be a combination of the legislation in force, which is concretely AI Act, which is now in a very mature stage of legislative process. The AI Act delivers on very clear assessing of the risk of different AI technologies. So this act, once being in force, will of course also give a chance of stopping some technologies or changing the technologies so that they are not so risky. You remember there is the list in the annex, the list of the risky technologies or risky sectors. And you asked about the labeling. This is a quicker tool which we propose, which we would like to see. And my answer is simple. We want the platforms to label the production of AI in the way which the normal user, who is also distracted by many different things, but normal user will clearly see that this is not the text or the visual produced, developed, created by real people. This is the robot speaking. So for us, it's important that there is a speed, so immediate labeling, and clarity.
Thank you. Jillian over there, and then I see you as well. Jillian.
I was wondering, first off, what this means for Twitter's compliance with DSA. Have you spoken with people at Twitter about how they're going to comply with the DSA now they've pulled out the disinformation code? And also, I was wondering if you are planning on adding any AI safeguards to the DSA, or that exclusively for the AI Act?
As I said, the DSA is coming into force. We are not going to change it or add anything into that. I am rather mentioning the AI Act, which is still in the legislative process. But coming back to Twitter, of course, if they want to operate and make money on European market, they have to comply with the Digital Services Act. They have been designated as the very large online platform already. So from August this year, our structures, which will play the role of the enforcers of the DSA, will look into Twitter's performance, whether they are compliant, whether they are taking necessary measures to mitigate the risks and to take action against the illegal, especially illegal content. This is not The European Union is not the place where we want to see the imported Californian law. We said it many times, and that's why I also want to come back and appreciate the cooperation with the former former people working in Twitter who collaborated with us several years already on code of conduct against hate speech and code of practice as well. So we are sorry about that. I think that Twitter had very knowledgeable and determined people who understood that there must be some responsibility, much increased responsibility on the side of the platforms like Twitter.
Thank you. Owens.
Thank you. 2 questions on Twitter, if I may, Commissioner. First of all, when they told you about the decision to withdraw from the code, did they raise any specific concerns about the code of practice? Did they raise any criticisms? And if so, what were they? Now, the second question is, since Elon Musk took over Twitter, the platform seems to have shifted its approach from restricting the spread of disinformation to attaching additional information to misleading tweets. They call this the community notes, and I've been seeing a lot more of these since the change of leadership. Now, my question is, if Twitter can show you that they have the capacity to do that at an appropriate scale, will that be sufficient to comply with the DSA, or will they need to show that they're taking harsher measures against disinformation? Thank you.
Of course, it would be sexy if I say that in September this year, Twitter will get sanction of 6% of annual turnover. Forget it. I did not say that because, of course, I cannot predict. The reaction of the enforcer, which is the Commission in this case, will have to be very objective. It will be based on a thorough assessment of the measures taken by each of the platforms. And Twitter, I think, knows well what they have to do because the Digital Services Act is very clear in enumerating the obligations. So I cannot predict. I can only say that Twitter decrease to some extent the, protection because of the withdrawal from the code of practice, because the code of practice is going to be recognized as the very serious and trustworthy mitigating measure against the harmful content. So am I too complicated in explaining? Simply those who will remain under the code of practice will have some kind of easier situation in explaining the enforcers what they are doing and that they are doing the right thing. I would even say about some kind of turning or changing the burden of proof. Yeah, that there will be much more, let's say, much easier situation for the signatories. But at the same time, the signatories of the Code of Practice will have to fully comply with the Digital Services Act, which is the hard legislation. When I received it, we received a letter Friday, one dark Friday afternoon, or was it sunny? I don't know. How was the Friday before the last Friday? And it was a letter not explaining much, just announcing and thanking for cooperation. But of course, it didn't come as a surprise because it was already announced some time ago through the media.
Thank you. Clotilde, you were first. Lisa. No, you need to take the wireless microphone.
Hi, Clotilde from Politico. I have 2 questions for you. First, there's already a part in the DSA provision that asks very large online platforms and search engines to label manipulated images, audio, and video, and that could come as soon as August 25. So how will this new idea for labeling as part of the code of practice fit into this? What is it trying to do on top of the DSA? And then I have a separate question. You also have a regulation on political advertising that is currently being negotiated by the Council and the European Parliament, and it's been stuck a little bit, and it's supposed to come, I mean, the Commission wanted it to come in force for the European elections in time for 2024. Do you have any fear that the regulation will not be ready in time? Thank you.
If I say I have fear, the wrong things will start happening. I have to always be optimistic. But on labeling, you are right. Our measure under the Code of Practice might come earlier, because one of the advantages of the Code of Practice is the speed, that we can agree on very quick reaction and quick method. And you are right that the Digital Services Act is foreseeing that. And then after the DSA will come into force, then some of the commitments under the Code of Practice will cease to exist. Yeah? So it will be transferred under the Digital Services regime. So speed is the difference.
Before August 25.
Yes. And the second, political ads, the trialogue is not easy. I have to say that we have to invest a lot of efforts to achieve convergence of the opinions of the co-legislators. I come to the negotiations always with the same mantra, that we do not want to hinder or reduce the free political speech online, and that we want the private data, sensitive data, to be protected, and that we want transparency of the political ads when it's paid for ad. So the co-legislators need more time. We might have another trialogue at the end of June. And then if this will not result in agreement, we will have to continue. And I still believe it might be in force before the European elections. And sometimes when you believe, it's just a dream. This is still realistic, I believe. Please.
Good morning, Lisa O'Carroll from The Guardian. Just following up from that question. Are you saying that the social media companies, you'd like them to start labelling AI before August 25th? That's my first question. And the second question is, litigation takes a long time, enforcement takes a long time. If Twitter does not comply with the DSA and very evidently is disseminating stuff from bad actors, how quickly can you enforce any of the sanctions in the DSA? Thank you.
Again, first, the second one, we are now enlarging the capacities in the Commission to be quick and efficient and to act in a very, how to say, decisive manner, relevant to the level of risk. Yeah, because we can already now see the negative impact of non-compliance of the platforms, and so we will. I believe that the Commission will be efficient and quick enough. Sure. Of course, I cannot predict whether the investigation will be finalized by the end of the year, whether there will be some sanction. I would like to give Twitter the chance to defend their right to make business in Europe without any sanction. Yeah, let's not predict. What was the first?
Timeline on the labelling.
Yeah, the labeling should be done now.
So before August 25th.
Immediately. Yeah.
This concludes our press conference. The Vice President has to go to the Parliament. Thank you very much for your time and for attendance.
Thank you very much.
Have a nice day. Thank you.